Welcome to English Literature. My name is Mrs. John. I'm Head of English and I've been teaching literature for a few years. Our English Literature team consists of myself, Mr. Dickens, Miss O'Brien, Mrs. Clifford and Mrs. Wright, and you're normally taught by two teachers who teach different parts of the course. As you can see from our first slide, some of the core texts that you study include Hamlet, Wide Sargasso's Sea, A Streetcar Named Desire, dystopian texts like The Handmaid's Tale in 1984, A Doll's House by Ibsen and Rossetti, and that's Christina Rossetti's poems. So your A-level course spans over 2 years. There are 3 components to the course. OCR just like to use the word component, but it just refers to the papers. So component 1 would equal paper 1, component 2, paper 2, and so on. So component 1 and 2 are assessed by exam, and it will be closed text or closed book exam. Component 3 is assessed as coursework. It's given the name now NEA, so non-examined assessment, but it means coursework, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. As you can see from the next slide, you've got a content overview and an assessment overview. So in year 12, we start with component 1, so paper 1. One of your teachers will teach you Hamlet, and this will be for at least the first term, as it's quite a long play. Sometimes this runs over into the second term, but usually we're finished by around January time with Hamlet. Your other teacher will be teaching you a comparative question, which is why you're studying 2 texts. A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen, which you compare with a collection of Christina Rossetti's poetry. So this counts as your drama, so Hamlet's drama, Ibsen is drama, and your poetry, Rossetti, pre-1900 paper, is worth 40% of your total A-level, 60 marks, closed text, as I said before, and you have 2 hours 30 minutes for the exam. The exam's broken down into 2 questions for Hamlet, and you have a question for the comparative Christina Rossetti and Ibsen, but you do have a choice of question. Component 2 then is our dystopian paper, and in this has proved quite popular with our students, although it's entirely subjective. You may prefer Hamlet and Rossetti and Ibsen. We'll just have to see when you start the course. So the dystopian paper includes the study of 2 core texts, so these are compulsory, The Handmaid's Tale and 1984, so you'll study 1 text with one teacher and 1 with the other. The paper is similar in terms of weighting, 40% of the total A-level, 60 marks closed text, 2 hours 30 minutes. The first question of the dystopian paper is question 5. That's just where it falls on the paper, so don't worry about the question 5 element, is a close analysis of an unseen dystopian extract, and you have lots of practice in class analysing extracts. The second question is where your core texts come in, and this is where you're given an aphorism or a statement, something like surveillance is a key feature of dystopian text, and then you have to evaluate that statement, saying how far you agree or disagree in relation to the dystopian text that you've studied. So either The Handmaid's Tale, 1984, both of them, and any wider reading. So there's a lot of wider reading for this paper of dystopian literature, and you're given a reading list, which you will find in the next steps part of the website. Component 3 is your NEA, so non-examined assessment. You have 2 pieces of coursework for this. One is on Streetcar Named Desire, and this is close reading. We don't do the recreative writing piece. We've always done the close analysis because we find that's where our students are most successful. The comparative essay is on Wide Sargasso's Sea and a collection of poetry by Carol Ann Duffy called Feminine Gospels. The Wide Sargasso's Sea novel, if you're aware of this, is basically a sequel to Jane Eyre, sorry, not a sequel. It's meant to explain the characterisation of Bertha in Jane Eyre. So a prequel, not a sequel, sorry. So an understanding of Jane Eyre is essential. So summer reading. Jane Eyre would also be good. And do please watch as many of these different texts as you can. So versions of Hamlet, A Doll's House. You can watch performances on digital theatre. You can watch as many dystopian films as you like as well. So watching things is as important as reading. Okay, moving on. So a little bit more about component 1 with Hamlet. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but it just outlines the knowledge, skills and understanding. So analysis of close detail, language and dramatic effects. So you need to be confident with your use of terminology here. Understanding the play as a whole and thinking about the structural implications of where things happen in the play and why. Knowing a little bit about context, but you won't ever be asked in the exam to be writing about the context of Shakespeare's day. It's important to understand that because it does shape our meaning and understanding of the play, but you're not asked to write about it. Okay, next slide then, the unseen close reading dystopian. Again, as I've said before, question 5 is about close analysis, so you need your terminology, language, form and structure, being able to say what the effects are, being aware of the dystopian genre conventions, being aware of how typical particular features are within dystopian texts or how atypical they are. Okay, so the NEA then, what the examiner is interested in here is encouraging your study, interest and enjoyment of modern literature. Okay, and what that means is that you have more time, so you're not under the restraints of the exam. You have a lot of time in class. We use IT rooms, having studied the text, in which you draft a piece of coursework and then you get feedback on it and then you do your final version. And you're really able to explore the nuances of the texts. You're particularly able to look at those profitable comparisons in Wide Sargasso Sea and Duffy, for example, and really get down to the nitty-gritty analysis in Streetcar. Okay. So these slides are just going through in a bit more detail the skills that you will need for those NEAs. An overview of the assessment objectives then for the whole of the A-level course. So remember, it's a linear course over 2 years and you're examined at the end of it. In year 12, just to mention, you do get examined at the end of year 12. They're internal exams and they're just for us to see how far you progress since the beginning of year 12. Yes, there are ongoing assessments throughout and pupil tracking, but the exam at the end of year 12 is quite useful for us to see how you might progress into year 13 and helps us with things like predictive grades and UCAS grades, although we never base our UCAS or predicted grades solely on an examination mark. They are combined with our judgment of you throughout the year and the judgment of your performance. So AO1 is all about your ability to construct an argument, to use terminology, to write accurately. And yes, as a literature student, SPAG is incredibly important, particularly in your NEAs. By this level, examiners are expecting you to be able to read and write coherently and accurately, and at the very least to proofread your work to ensure that there are minimal, if no errors at all, in written expression. AO2 is all about authorial methods, so this is analysing the ways in which meanings are shaped in literary texts. What is the function of a particular character? Why are they there? What dynamic is being presented in a relationship between those characters? What theme is being foregrounded? What pattern of motifs are being presented and why? What is the significance of a particular symbol, and so on and so forth. Context. Context here for OCR, instead of meaning social, historical, political context, which you do need to be aware of, what they're more interested in is wider reading. So the context of, for example, dystopian literature within the context of the dystopian genre, what is typical or atypical of dystopian literature. And when it comes to Hamlet or Rossetti or Ibsen, context, knowing, for example, the world in which Ibsen was writing and Shakespeare is important, and Rossetti, but they're more interested in how ideas are presented in their writing elsewhere and are brought to life in the works that you're studying. So there'll be more information about that as we study the course. AO4 is about comparison, so where that's relevant, remember that comparison includes similarities as well as differences. Critical theory, so this is all about your ability to examine different interpretations, but to challenge them, not always to agree with them, but to evaluate them. I agree to an extent, but I've considered this. It could be theories like feminist theory, post-colonial theory, psychoanalytical theory, or it might be critics' views, so named literary critics. It might be a viewpoint expressed by a student or a teacher that you've come across. It might be different interpretations here also include an interpretation by a director, be it of a DVD or of an actual live performance. So lots of things to be thinking about there as well. Okay, so a few percentages for you in case your brain needs some numbers now. So you've got your percentage at A level. I'm not going to read them all through, but you can have a look at those and the weightings there. One thing to note is that the context, so AO3, is a dominant objective for the component 2 exam paper. The AO3 for question 6 is dominant, but remember that is to do with wider reading more so than social, political, historical context. Okay, so we've come to the end of our slide. I hope, well, our whole PowerPoint. I hope that you found it useful. If you do have any questions that I haven't covered as I've been going through the PowerPoint, then feel free to email me directly. It's st-charlotte.dron@whsg.info. That's all lowercase. Or you can email the school and they'll forward your email to me. Hopefully you by now have seen the next steps area of our school website with details of reading that you could be getting on with and the holiday tasks. And again, if you have any questions about those, please feel free to email. If I don't get back to you straight away, don't be put off. It's just that I won't be checking my email every day in the summer, but I will get to you as soon as I can. In the meantime, have a lovely summer, stay safe, and we're really looking forward to welcoming you to the course and possibly some of you to the school if you're external students in September. Okay, bye for now.